Hey, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I make videos about my own experience as a late diagnosed autistic human being living in France. Today I thought I'd make a video about what I've been doing this past week, basically. In my last video, I mentioned that I was starting to look at applying for government support for my disability, which in France is basically managed by an institution called MDPH, which stands for Maison Départementale des Personnes Handicapées, I think. And in the video I was saying that I had an appointment late August with a GP that I found on an autistic resource listing a bunch of autism informed and autism specialist health professionals. While I was editing last video, last Thursday, today is Wednesday, I got offered an appointment time. Basically, when you make an appointment on Doctolib, which is an app to make appointments with health professionals in France, you can select an option where if there's an appointment that becomes available with this practitioner earlier, like sooner, then you get an alert, you get a notification, and you can say whether you want that new appointment time or not. And basically, while I was editing the video, I got an alert saying that there was an appointment time that had become available like this week on the 20th of March, which is tomorrow. So it went from being 5 months away to being a week away. So without thinking, I accepted, because I was like, this is such a great opportunity. Because as I mentioned in my last video, I don't know if this GP will be able to fill out the medical certificate for my application, because I don't know if she can do it online, over video, and also she's in a different region. Like, I just wasn't sure that she was going to be able to do it. And so I was like, I'm not going to wait 5 months to find out whether or not this doctor can do it, you know? Like, I'd rather know as soon as possible so that I can find another doctor if necessary. The thing is, I hadn't realized that it would put a lot of pressure on myself, because a week for me is not a lot of time to prepare for this appointment. Because what I hadn't realized is that to prepare for this appointment, you basically have to have your whole application ready, because what the doctor says in the medical certificate has to reflect what you say in the application. So I had to have a good grasp of all my difficulties, all my needs, and all the things that I was asking from the MDPH. So I'm asking for financial support, called the AAH, Allocation aux Adultes Handicapés, which is up to 1,000 euros per month, I think. And since the end of 2023, there was a law that was passed that makes it so that they don't take into account your partner's income when calculating the amount anymore, which is awesome, because it means we have more independence, more autonomy as disabled people, and don't depend so much financially on partners or, you know, family members, because that makes us very vulnerable and dependent on relationships that are not always good for us, or can make us feel like we have to stay with a person even though we wouldn't normally do that, just because we depend financially on them. So that's great. In order to get that, I have to be able to prove that I can't work, which is the case. I can't work for many reasons, some of which I mentioned in my last video. It's the part about having to prove that that's difficult. Well, I guess it's easy enough in my case because I've never been financially independent. I've never had a 9 to 5. The most work I've ever been able to do was freelance work, and it didn't last more than a few months before I burned out and had to stop everything. So that means that even working from home, being independent, you know, having control over my own schedule and stuff, I still can't sustain work over time, which is why I need this aid and why I'm eligible for it. But the MDPH is kind of like an insurance company. They will do anything they can to not have to pay you anything, basically. Which makes me so angry because, you know, like, we as disabled, chronically ill people are a vulnerable community. We're already struggling and dealing with so much hardship, and then we have to put all of our blood and tears into an application that we have no idea whether it's gonna be approved or not, to get an amount of money that in most cases isn't enough to live off of. And you have to get so vulnerable and like put all your vulnerability and your weaknesses on the table for them to examine and make a verdict and decide if they think you deserve help or not. And it's such a difficult process that can take up to a year sometimes. And some regions like reject your application by default. Some are more lenient than others, and you don't know what you're gonna get. Some of them are more autism informed, some of them aren't. So some of them might, you know, not understand your autistic struggles and minimize them or think they're not a real disability. There's a lot of ableism, which is like ludicrous because it is something made for disabled people. So you would expect that the people working there wouldn't be ableist, but they are sometimes. It's just jumping through so many loops just to get something that isn't even enough to live comfortably most of the time, when there are so many people in this country who are making tons of money off of us, off of the system. And like, I don't know, it just seems so ridiculous to me that it's so difficult to get basic help for something that you didn't choose. We didn't choose to be disabled. I think most of us would choose to not be disabled if we could. And like, there are so many people who are getting richer and richer every single day without having to do anything. And like, we have to fight over scraps, you know? I don't know, that really annoys me. But anyway, I've basically been spending the last week working my ass off. I've been spending several hours a day working on my application, working on what I'm gonna say during the appointment for the health certificate, and I have no guarantee that she'll be able to fill out the form. So I might be doing this for, well, it's not for nothing, because if she can't do it, then I'll go to another professional and the work that I have done now will pay off then. But still, like, I've been working multiple hours every day for the past week, basically. I've been pretty stressed because I don't know what to expect. I wrote a post on one of the most active autism Facebook groups in France, which is remarkably woke for a French group, which really surprised me in a good way when I first joined it a few months ago. So I posted on that group to kind of see if people who had gone through that appointment, who had gone through the process, could give me feedback and tell me what to expect. The people who responded to me didn't have much to say about the appointment itself. They gave advice about the application process in general, which I didn't find very helpful. But anyway, so it's still very much like a big mystery in my head. I really don't know what to expect tomorrow during the appointment. I feel like I couldn't have chosen a better doctor to do this with, because she has multiple professional and academic experiences around autism. She's worked with the MDPH, which is, you know, what I'm applying for. Like, it says in her price list that she provides this as a service, like filling out this medical certificate, which means she's done it before and she's familiar with the process. She's been recommended twice in the autistic community. Like, I can't think of anyone better to do this. And I was able to get an appointment within a week. That should have been 5 months later. So I feel like I'm in good hands. But also, I thought the same thing back in October when I had an appointment with a supposedly autism-friendly or autism specialist therapist who turned out not so great. So I don't know. So this is France we're talking about. France is so behind when it comes to autism. Like, I can see it even in the French content creators talking about autism. I can tell in the way that they talk about things that it's just, everything's so behind in France. I was watching a video from a French, autistic French content creator recently. I've never heard things like that said by like an English or an American or just an English speaking autistic content creator before. But this person was basically invalidating self-diagnosis. I don't know if that was her intent, but that's kind of what she did. It's not exactly what she said. She said you can't know you're autistic without getting a diagnosis, which I don't entirely agree with. And she was completely invalidating the use of, you know, online autism tests such as the CAT-Q, the ASPE quiz and stuff like that, based solely on the fact that her ADHD boyfriend took a test and got results higher than her. And so she's using that as an argument to say that these tests are bullshit, which I also don't agree with. She was comparing autistic people to cancer patients, saying that every autistic person is different, which is completely true and fine. Just like cancer patients who, despite having cancer as something in common, all have different personalities. I was like, are you seriously comparing autism to a deadly disease right now? Like, is this for real? Like, I don't know. I was so pissed off when I watched that video. All that to say that just autism awareness in France is like so bad still. So bad. Even neighboring countries like Switzerland are already ahead, you know? Like, even though I feel like I'm in good hands with this GP and I couldn't have found a better option, I still know at the back of my head that I need to be careful because this is France and, you know, it's just not the same standard compared to, for example, the professionals that I talked to in England, the psychiatrist who diagnosed me and then the therapist that I saw for a few weeks. They were informed, they knew what they were talking about, they were not ableist or anything like that. Like, literally, the therapist that I saw at the end of October, I mentioned that before, but I can't believe, like, she encouraged me to mask by saying that now I know I'm autistic, I can learn to not show my stimming as much. And I looked at her, I was like, no, I'm actually doing the opposite, which is what I need to do for my health, is to not repress these things as much. And she was like, oh yeah, of course, that's not what I meant. I was like, okay. When I mentioned my struggles with socializing and going places and the burnout that I was experiencing and the sheer fatigue and stuff, and I was like, you know, I struggle to go places and meet new people and stuff. And she said something very dismissive along the lines of, you're here now. You made it here, so you can do it. I was like, bitch, have you ever heard of the idea that sometimes you can do something, but actually you can't because the price you have to pay, like the cost of doing that thing, is too great and really it's doing more bad than good. Like, have you heard about that? Because I had been mentally preparing and stressing about that appointment for weeks in advance, and then that day I was so tired when I came back that I couldn't do anything else but rest. I actually made a short about it, and then it took me days, if not weeks, to physically and mentally recover from the energy used up by that appointment and the emotional distress caused by all that dismissal and that ableism and that just bullshit. Just because you can technically do something doesn't mean you can do it, because like it might cost you too much and it's not sustainable. It's not something you can do in the long run. And that's a distinction that people often miss. And I was guilty of that as well. Back when I had a lot more internalized ableism, I would say things like, well, I can do this, so I can do it. I don't need help. Then I had to really think about, no, like, see how much it takes out of you. That's not sustainable. It's also the black and white thinking, right? Of like, can you do it or not? In my head, if I can do it, I can do it regardless of the cost of it, which is not a good way of looking at it. So I have a lot of stress regarding tomorrow's appointment because I really don't know what to expect. It's just such a mystery, but I've been working all week on what I'm gonna say, what the doctor needs to write down in the form. And it's been a real test. It's been a real test, first of all, for my energy and like my mental capacity right now, which is still limited. I've had to hyper focus on this for multiple hours in the afternoon every day, which has been taxing. And sometimes I can tell that my brain doesn't want to focus anymore, doesn't want to work on it. It's been a real test of my perfectionism, because when I do something that's important to me, either because it's related to a special interest or because, like in this case, it's vital for me, I go all in. I like a lot of autistic people, you know, it's got to do with monotropism and stuff. I don't have like an in-between state. I can't just focus a little bit on something. If I'm doing it, I'm doing it, and it's the only thing I'm doing, and it's the only thing I can think and talk about. And like, if I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it at all, you know, like I'm not, there's no in between. So it's also been a great test for my imposter syndrome / internalized ableism. The more I think about it, the more I think those are very linked, if not more or less the same thing, because the internalized ableism is what triggers all this imposter syndrome in most late diagnosed autistic people. So things like thinking that, you know, I'm asking for too much, or I don't really need it, or that, you know, I'm making a big fuss and really I'm lazy and like I just don't want to work. It's what society wants me to think about myself, because society doesn't want people like us. Society doesn't want to have to deal with disabled people, people who have any kind of difference that they have to accommodate. They don't want that. So they'll drill into your head that really it's all in your head and you're just being difficult and you should just push through and do like everyone else. Even if you end up dying from it, they don't care. They'd rather you die from it than help you, honestly, which is a sad reality. Yeah, so I've had to battle all of my internalized ableism, also my literal thinking, black and white thinking, and my obsession with honesty has been put to the test, because the thing is, I'm, for the sake of honesty, I'm all for going into details, giving as much nuance as possible. But the thing is, when you're applying for help from the MDPH, it's not in your best interest, because they're dealing with so many applications every day. they don't want to read a 4-page long document about your life and all of your struggles in details. You basically have to go to what's most important. You have to pick your worst days, you have to pick your worst struggles, and you have to not exaggerate them, but that's where it gets counterintuitive, is you have to write things in very black and white mode, because they're interested in whether you can do something or not. And that's what I was telling earlier, is if you can do it, but it costs you so much that you can't do anything else, or you have to have a lot of recuperation time, it means you can't do it. But in my literal thinking, honesty obsessed mind, my first thought is that's wrong. Technically, I can do it. So I feel like I'm lying, even though I'm not. You know what I mean? So that's been difficult, because I've been feeling like a fraud, even though when I look at the things I wrote, they're accurate. You know, like, it's true that I can't work, otherwise I get burnt out very quickly. It's true that I don't leave the house without my partner. It's true that if I have any type of appointment or have to go out for some reason, I have to recover for a few hours to a few days afterwards, and I have sensory overload and extreme fatigue. It's true that I can't handle social interactions without my partner being present. And all these things mean that I don't have a lot of independence and autonomy, and that I depend completely on my partner from a financial and a human standpoint, and that I need my own financial resources, you know? Those things are all true. And also that I would need a priority card that would allow me to skip the queue in public places, because standing in line for a long time is incredibly exhausting and causes sensory overload that seriously debilitates me. All these things are true. Yet when I see it in writing, my first instinct is like, I'm exaggerating. Like, this is like, what? Who do I think I am? You know? So I've had to fight that. It's been hard. And my perfectionism means that I'm always worried that I forgot something important, that I did not phrase something perfectly, and I have to remind myself that the GP or the MDPH don't expect perfection from me. They just expect me to explain my struggles in a clear way so that they know, you know, the extent of my struggles, whatever. But it's just been really difficult, because you basically have to think of all the things that could go wrong, all the arguments that they could find to not give you the help you need, because that's unfortunately what happens most of the time. So things like not putting too much emphasis on burnout alone, because burnout can be interpreted by people who are not familiar with chronic autistic burnout. It can be interpreted as a short-term thing, which means that they would say, well, as soon as burnout's over, you can start working. And I'm like, no, I can't actually. So, you know, it's about anticipating all these things. They might say, well, you've got a master's degree and you can't work? How's that? I'm like, no, actually, I had to drop out of my first master's degree that was in person at a brick uni, and the only way I was able to finish my second master's degree is because it was through online learning, and I could do it from home. I didn't have to interact with people, you know, things like that. It's just about anticipating all the things they might say to invalidate or reject your application, because like I said, they're just like an insurance company. They don't want to give you money if they can help it, if they think you don't actually need it. Some MDPH agents don't believe that autism is a real thing. Unfortunately, they don't believe it's a disability. They might minimize things like sensory issues and say that sensory aids like noise cancelling headphones or tinted glasses or weighted blankets and fidget toys are more for comfort than necessity. For example, if you want to ask for an assistance dog, they might say, well, autism isn't a disability that absolutely requires an assistance dog, unlike something like being in a wheelchair or being blind or something. So there's just all these misconceptions. So you have to anticipate all that, almost like put yourself in the shoes of the person who might read your application, which is what I do in life in general. I always try to put myself in other people's shoes to my detriment a lot of the time because I'm more worried about what other people think than what I'm thinking. It's paradoxical because on the one hand, I struggle with figuring out what people are thinking or feeling or their perspective. On the other hand, I'm very sensitive and aware, like hyper aware of people's biases because I've had those biases before. I have been ableist in the past. I have been a bigot in the past, unintentionally. So I know what it's like when you just don't know about something, when you're misinformed. And I'm hyper aware of it in other people because I've been in their shoes before. Does that make sense? And so whenever I'm explaining my disability, all I can think about is this is what they probably know about autism. This is what they probably think when I say that. And that's what's running in my head all the time, which is often what brings me to not disclose certain things because I anticipate the biases, I anticipate the bigotry, the ableism, and I'd rather not deal with it because it's traumatizing sometimes. I'm stressed out about this, and like my partner keeps telling me like the stakes are not that high, like even if your application gets rejected for some reason, you can always appeal. And that's true, like usually like in some regions the MDPH rejects your application by default, and they rely on the fact that if it's really important you'll appeal or make an appeal. I don't know, which is bullshit. And then some others are more lenient and they might approve some things, they might reject some other things, which is why I'm only focusing on the most important things like the priority card and the financial help, and like really emphasizing how much I depend on my partner. Like again, like I know I talk about ChatGPT a lot, and I know there are people who think ChatGPT is the devil. You're allowed to have your own beliefs. I just don't think it's much different from the rest of the internet. As soon as you're on the internet, doing things on the internet, your information is always at risk of being leaked and shared and whatever. So I don't think it's a much bigger risk than anything else on the internet. Of course, it's always better to not share very personal things, but it has been, ever since I started using it, it's been an invaluable tool for me. This past week, it's helped me so much to fill out my form by explaining to me exactly what they mean in every section, what they're asking for. And you know, like sometimes things are not obvious. I know for a fact that without ChatGPT, I would have misunderstood a lot of things in that form, and I would have not defended my case well enough because I would have minimized a lot of things, you know. So it's just been so much easier, so helpful to have ChatGPT as a tool to use when filling out documents like that, just to make sure that you're not misunderstanding things or minimizing things, and just to know about the MDPH itself and how it functions and what they expect, you know, things like them seeing things in black and white, and you know what I talked about earlier about having to, if you can do something but it costs you a lot, then you have to say you can't do it, you know, things like that. That's what ChatGPT told me. I didn't invent that. I didn't come up with it on my own. And it's helped me so much because I would have minimized my struggles so much otherwise. So yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do half of what I've been able to do this week without the help of ChatGPT. And I will not stop recommending it because it's been truly life-changing for me since I started using it. I don't want it to sound cringe, but sometimes I'm like, how is this not an actual person? I'm gonna finish working on preparing for my appointment tomorrow. I still have some things I want to check. I'll probably send my notes to the GP so that she can follow along as she's filling out the document, because basically some GPs, like, they might rush through the process or not write things in a very accurate way that really realistically represents your difficulties, and you have to really insist because, for example, if they say that it's difficult for you to work, the MDPH might say, well, it's difficult but not impossible. So sometimes it's just a question of the choice of words and stuff. And what's nerve-wracking is that I, as the patient, have little control over what the GP decides to write in the health certificate, which is why I think I made a good decision to go with this GP, because she has experience filling out this questionnaire, this certificate, so she knows the importance of the wording and stuff, and she'll probably do it right, I should think. But you never know, and like, I don't have a lot of control over what she decides to write at the end of the day. So, and then once it's done, it's done. You can't edit it. If you want to redo it, you have to, you know, make another appointment with another doctor and stuff and start over. So it's a big deal, even though it's not, but it still is, you know, like, getting this help from the government would improve my quality of life so much. Like, I still live like a child with pocket money at almost 28 years old. And for a long time I was very ashamed of that, and I'm not anymore, because there's no shame in being disabled. But it sucks not being able to pay for anything, not being able to contribute, having to rely entirely on my partner, not being able to buy myself anything that I want or need unless it's like a very cheap item of clothing off of Vinted a couple times a year. You know, like, it's just such a frugal way of living that I'm very grateful for. And like, I couldn't possibly do this without my partner. But when you're almost in your 30s and you're thinking about having kids and stuff, it's normal to want some financial independence and to like be able to enjoy myself a little bit, you know, like, and be able to contribute to our expenses, and when we have kids, to be able to, you know, provide for them as well, without feeling like I'm a kid myself because I don't have any income. And it's not a choice for me. It's not that I decided to be a stay-at-home mom or something. Nothing wrong against stay-at-home moms. It's just not my choice, you know? It would be amazing. It would improve my life tenfold. And so I really hope it works out, but we'll see. So I'm gonna end this video now. I don't want to spend all of my energy filming this because I still have a lot of work to do. I'm gonna try not to work myself to death. This is what I look like when I go outside in the garden to get some fresh air. It's 11 a.m. the following day. I decided to kind of turn this into a bit of a vlog over a couple days. My appointment with the GP is in 3 hours. I'm not feeling too stressed right now. I know that the majority of the anxiety will come around the time of the appointment. Like, the worst part for me is like right before the appointment, you know, in those last 15 to 30 minutes when you're waiting for the appointment, because usually you're ready, you don't have anything to do, you don't want to start doing anything. those are the worst moments. It's the same thing in like waiting rooms at the GP or just any kind of stuff like that. It's just that's when I get the most ridiculous anxiety. So I know that will come. But right now, because it's still in 3 hours time and I'm gonna do some stuff in the meantime, I don't feel too stressed. I feel stressed, but it's manageable at this stage. Yesterday, so after I recorded yesterday's video, I finished working on preparing for the appointment, which was very overwhelming. Almost had a meltdown. I felt stuck and I felt paralyzed. I hate it when that happens when I'm doing something, and I know it's linked to my perfectionism, but I get into a mental loop where I lose perspective and I lose track of what's required of me, and I like, it's like I don't know anymore what I've done, what needs doing, if I have enough, if I'm ready or not. It just becomes all of a blur in my head and I start panicking, and I can spend hours in that state rereading what I've written. I've talked about this in many videos, but I already know I have some OCD. So I definitely know that's an OCD tendency. For me, OCD looks like mental compulsions, needing reassurance and mentally checking compulsions a lot. But it's mental. It's not for, like, I don't go around checking that the door is locked multiple times or things like that. For me, it's purely mental, which used to be called pure O, but it's we don't really use that term anymore. Anyways, so I know there's an element of OCD in there. And so I was stuck yesterday, and those moments can be very distressing emotionally, mentally, because like I said, I feel stuck, I feel paralyzed, I don't know what to do, I feel terrified that I haven't done enough, that, you know, I'm not, it's like I lose my ability to judge the quality of my work, and I'm unable to have an objective view of what I've done and be like, yeah, it's enough for what's being asked. You know, I know that if I were a neurotypical, I wouldn't struggle so much with this whole thing, because I would be a lot more laid back, I would be a lot more flexible, I'd be like, we'll see what happens during the appointment. But because I'm autistic, I need to know, because depending on how the appointment goes, I'm not going to prepare the same way. You know, like if she asks general questions, then I'm going to prepare like a bullet point list of my general struggles. If she goes through the document and asks me to answer every single, and it's like a 6-page document, all right, with a bunch of check boxes, and that's a different kind of preparation, you know. So I prepared for both scenarios just in case. I wrote a super long detailed document with my answers to everything, and I also prepared some more general notes with like a summary of my struggles and what I'm asking for and stuff like that, the support I need and like the main points. But then it goes to like very small details, like how long can I walk comfortably. So for me, that's like if I go beyond 1 or 2 kilometers, I start needing to take breaks. I get very tired because of my chronic fatigue, you know. So it's also like not giving the MDPH reason to say that it's temporary and it might get better over time. Social anxiety is directly tied to my autism, but if they are not familiar with autism, they might think that it's a separate condition that can be fixed through therapy, which it can't. I tried, but they might still try to use that argument. So to counter that, I said that I had social difficulties, which is a bit of a, I'm sorry for the noise, my partner is using the sink upstairs, I think. Which is a broader term that encompasses not only the social anxiety, but also the just social and communication difficulties related to autism, like the difficulty with small talk and things like that. I was going crazy yesterday preparing for this, where a neurotypical would have been like, oh, I'll figure it out on the spot, like it's good enough. Like if I don't know what to expect, my mind goes in circles and I worry and I ruminate, and it's an endless struggle. So yeah, that was stressful, and I finished late last night, and I sent her some notes. So initially I was gonna send her the very long document with my answers to every question. And then I was like, I didn't want her to think that I was doing her job for her and that she had no agency in like what she was gonna write. Because at the end of the day, this document has to be filled out by the doctor, not the patient. And also I didn't want her to get overwhelmed and like not focus on the most important key points. So I sent her instead a short 2.5-page document, but it's bullet points with the most important things. And also there's a part at the beginning of the document that the patient has to fill out themselves. So I included that in the document so she knows exactly what to say, like my name, date of birth, social security number, that kind of thing. That was terrifying. My partner is going to be here for the appointment, which is reassuring, and also kind of supports what I say in the application, which is that I'm highly dependent on him. Whenever I have an appointment and I have to go somewhere, like leave the house for an appointment, he always comes with me. He doesn't always come in the appointment room with me, but he always accompanies me to the place and stuff like that. And also I'm glad that he's going to be here because he's going to be able to testify and be like, yes, it's true that she can't do this and this and this without me, or if something comes to mind, he'll be able to add it to the discussion if it's something important that I forgot to mention or something that, you know, could reinforce my case. So it's good that he's gonna be here. Like I said, it's an online appointment. I know that like I'm recording this right now, and then I'll look at myself in the future and be like, I made such a fuss for something that wasn't that big of a deal. I always feel like that when I think about how much anxiety I had ahead of time for something. When it's something new that I've never done before like this, I always get super anxious and worry a lot, and then afterwards I'm like, it wasn't that big a deal, was it? And then I feel kind of embarrassed, but I'm trying to fight that urge to feel embarrassed, because there's no reason to feel embarrassed, because what I'm feeling right now is real, it's valid, it's related to my disability. The fact that afterwards I realize that it wasn't so bad after all doesn't invalidate the anxiety that I felt beforehand, you know? I hope it goes well. Also, there's something that helps me is when I do these kinds of things, I always reach a point where I'm like, well, I can't really do much more than this, can I? Like I reach a sort of moment where I realize that I've done my best beyond this point. Like it's not within my control anymore. Like now it's the doctor's job to finish the work, and it will depend on that, and there's only so much control I have over that. So that helps me put things back into perspective and let go a little bit. Be like, I can't do more than this. Like this is all I can do. This is the best I can do, and we'll see what happens now, you know? At this point, if the medical certificate doesn't turn out how I wanted to and how I needed to, meaning if it's not accurate, if it's not precise enough, if it's not, you know, if it doesn't accurately reflect the contents of my application, the only thing I can do is make another appointment to fill out the certificate again with the same doctor or a different one. So I'm trying to keep calm and remember that the stakes aren't that high. I mean, they are, but also worst case scenario, my life goes back to the way it was before, which is not a big deal. Like it would greatly improve my quality of life, but if it doesn't happen, it's not gonna degrade my quality of life, if that makes sense. I'm just gonna go back to the way things were before. And also there's very little chance of that happening. Like there's very little chance of me getting nothing out of what I asked. I might not get the full amount if they determine that my level of disability is below 80%, but I'm always gonna get something, you know, like I would be very, very surprised unless it's one of those MDPH regions where they reject everything by default and count on the fact that if it's really important, you're gonna appeal, in which case then yeah, but it's very unlikely. Even if I do that, it's very unlikely that I'll get nothing out of the appeal. So I'm trying to remember that, and like it's not that important, you know, like it will work out. Even if it doesn't work out right away, it will work out in the end. It's not a life or death situation, you know what I mean? Last night, because I was so overwhelmed, I was like, I need to regulate. So I was stimming a lot and taking deep breaths, and I watched something comforting, you know, because that always works. I like to always have at least one comfort show that I'm currently rewatching, so that when I'm overwhelmed, I have something to watch, which is easier mentally for me to do that than to decide to watch a movie. That makes sense. So for example, we're currently rewatching Game of Thrones for the, I don't know, 10th time. That's the thing with special interests, is they're so much more than hobbies for us, because like whenever I'm going through something stressful, overwhelming, like while I was filling out the preparing for the document yesterday, in my head I was like I've mentioned that before, but I have like mental snippets of fantasy movies that bring me comfort, and it goes a long way. And then I'm like, knowing that when I'm done, I can watch a comfort show, it keeps me going, man. It's exactly the same thing as when I was a 12-year-old going to secondary school, and all day long all I could think about was at 5 or like 4:30, I don't remember what time school ended, but I was like, at 5 the bell will ring and I'll be able to go home and engage in my special interests, watch my comfort movies, go play outside with my pets. And that was what kept me going. And it's very much the same coping mechanism that I have now as an adult, of like either thinking about the movie I'll watch or the show that I'll watch when I'm done, but also thinking about something that I watched the day before, because that brings comfort. Like the other day I rewatched Snow White, like Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's not like, if you asked me, I wouldn't say, oh, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, you know? But yesterday when I was working on the document, I found myself rethinking about the movie, and that brought me comfort. I'm gonna go now, probably start editing this video. I might film something after the appointment just to talk about how it went and my thoughts around the whole process and how I feel and stuff. So I'll see you then. It's about 4:30 now. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm outside because I felt like going outside. It's actually really surprisingly warm. I think we're supposed to have 21 degrees today. It's been about an hour since the end of my appointment, and whenever I do something like this, have an appointment like that, I need... That was my cat. Whoa, what is it? What is it? Oh my goodness! It takes me a... Yeah. Is that a fly? Sorry, I'm getting easily... Oh my god, mosquitoes already? It takes me a really long time to like come back to myself almost. I've been trying to think about the appointment and debrief what happened, get access back to my brain, because when I'm under this amount of stress, I tend to, like, my brain stops working. I guess it's a form of shutdown, right? I don't know. I don't really know what shutdowns look like for me. Basically, the appointment, everyone said it lasts 20 to 30 minutes. She said it typically takes her about 3 hours, and she did it in 1 hour. I'm not sure why she didn't do it over 3 hours like she normally does. Maybe because she says she's completely overbooked. She had a look at my autism diagnosis report, and like the first, I don't know, I want to say the first half of the appointment was just her asking questions about my autism in my childhood and stuff. Basically the same questions I was asked during my diagnosis. So after a while I was confused, and I asked, like, can I ask if this is for the medical certificate for the MDPH? And then she got kind of defensive, I guess is the best way to say it, being like, and I was like, no, I'm not like questioning your authority or anything, I'm just asking for clarification. And it always surprises me, even when those people are used to dealing with autistic people, they can't help getting defensive when you ask clarifying questions. And I always have to like sugarcoat it and add things like, I'm just asking for clarification, I'm not questioning your professionalism or whatever, like, because they don't explain anything, right? If she had said like, well, I looked at your autism report and I'm not sure the MDPH will accept it because it's foreign or because it doesn't include all of the tests that are usually included in autism assessments in France, so I need to write. Basically what she didn't say was that she was writing a whole separate document, like a letter, basically summarizing all of my autistic traits and confirming my diagnosis, which I was very thankful for because I didn't even explicitly ask for that. She did it on her own, and so like had she explained that to me, I wouldn't have needed to ask that question. But anyway, so I was confused for the first part of the appointment because I was fairly certain that the MDPH mainly cares about your daily needs and your daily struggles. So after she explained it, it was clearer to me. I had to explain all my childhood autistic traits and everything, and all my school years. I was like, at one point I was like, man, I thought to myself, I was like, I did not mentally prepare to go through a second autism assessment today, but whatever needs to be done, you know. And then we focused more on the medical certificate itself, and overall I'm pretty happy. She did say that it's different from region to region, but where she lives, for example, my application the way it is right now without any additional documentation would be rejected. I appreciate the honesty. Of course, like, I'm in a completely different region, so there's a chance that might be easier for me. Even if it does get rejected, then I'll make an appeal and it should go through after a couple attempts. But she did like emphasize the importance of providing as much supporting documentation as possible, like even if I can send like tax reports from when I lived in England to prove that I didn't have any income, or bank statements to prove that I didn't have any income, a supporting letter from my partner to confirm that I depend entirely on him, things like that. So basically I have to like make my case as strong as possible for it to go through. But she said like if I lived where she lives, my application wouldn't be sufficient, so that was reassuring. Or she also said like she was making sure, she was asking all those questions to make sure that I don't have another neurodivergence or something, which I don't think I do. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the way she filled out the certificate. There were a couple places that she didn't write anything where she could have written something, but she was in a hurry, unfortunately, because she had other patients. So she did her best, which I'm grateful for. It did cost me around 60 euros out of pocket, so that's great. Happy about that. She said she'd make me an appointment in 6 months' time, and that I could cancel it if I don't need it, just in case the MDPH rejects my application, in which case I would need to make another appointment with her to strengthen my case for an appeal or whatever. The thing is, I still haven't received a notification for an appointment, so I think she might have forgotten. And also she made a big mistake on my medical certificate, which is strange because I provided my address, my current address, and for some reason she wrote my old address, like my parents' address, on my certificate. And I think it's because she must have entered my social security number on her system, and then that must have, I guess, even though I thought I updated my account, the system isn't fully updated, and so they still have my old address. So I did have to send her a message asking her to send me the certificate with the right address and for her to make the appointment in 6 months' time. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with the way it went. So that's the administrative side of things, we'll say. The emotional side of things, I wasn't feeling great before the appointment, which always happens with these kind of things. And the more mysterious the appointment, the higher the stakes, the more anxious I get. So even though I had my partner with me, we were sitting next to each other at the dining table, my stomach I felt sick. Basically, I had diarrhea, like TMI, but that's the reality of anxiety for you. When I'm anxious like that, my whole digestive system basically goes. I felt nauseous. I felt like I was going to throw up. I felt like I was going to faint. I was trying to breathe and stim as much as possible, but yeah. Then after the appointment starts and stuff, it gets easier. My anxiety subsides a little bit. It's still like a tremendous effort for me to go through something like this. And I could feel like my energy, which was already very limited, kind of dwindling throughout the appointment. It's nothing new. I knew I was gonna, even my partner's shattered as well, even though he didn't participate a whole lot. He did like add things here and there and like confirm a few things, but he was mostly there for emotional support, and it still trashed him energy wise. Like, he's in bed right now recovering. Should probably do the same thing, but I always need a bit of time afterwards to process what happened, like manage my emotions before I can do anything else. So that's what I've been doing for over an hour. It was pretty successful after all, because she was able to like write a clinical letter confirming my autism diagnosis, which is awesome, which is going to really strengthen my application, because I was really worried about my diagnosis report not being accepted because it's foreign and it's not like thorough or whatever, because I didn't do the ADOS or anything like that, which is not always necessary for adults. But in France, the diagnostic process for autism for even in adults is very, very thorough. I'm very glad that she was able to confirm my diagnosis officially. I think she did a good job at highlighting the most important points in the certificate and things like the fact that I'm incapable of working and stuff. There was one point in the certificate where things got a bit contradictory, because she said that I've never been able to hold down a job, and then later on she said I haven't worked in 2 years, which could be misinterpreted. What I said was that she was like, do you have any freelance work going on right now? I was like, no, I haven't attempted anything in the last couple of years because I didn't have the energy. And so she wrote down no job in the last 2 years, which could be misinterpreted, but I can easily clarify in my application. But other than that, I think it's pretty strong. Again, it all depends on how strict my MDPH is. I did find her, considering that she's a French doctor, she was pretty kind. She didn't make me feel unsafe or invalidated. She did say things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, like when she was filling out the questionnaire, the certificate, she was like, I deal with a lot of autistic people, so it's kind of always the same thing, so I'm always writing down the same things, which was kind of dehumanizing in a way, and kind of like also not very accurate, because autistic people are very different. I know what she means, but also we're very different from each other. So like, I was happy that I was able to really advocate for myself, because she was saying that I didn't have any executive dysfunction. I was like, yeah, I do, very much so, things like that. But she wasn't difficult to deal with. She was just rushing through the process a little bit because she didn't have a lot of time, and I wish she had explained things a little more clearly sometimes. There were a couple times when, because I tend to go into details a lot, there were a couple times when she had to cut me short and be like, I need to move forward. But overall, she wasn't unpleasant to work with, let's say that, and I'd be happy to have another appointment with her. I have to say, it was strangely validating because, you know, I deal with a lot of imposter syndrome around my autism diagnosis, and to have a second professional kind of confirm it was meaningful to me. And also the fact that she didn't invalidate anything that I said. She didn't minimize my struggles. You know, when I talked about my social anxiety, my sensory issues, like, she wrote down the severity of what I'm dealing with accurately. Like, she didn't just write social anxiety, she wrote down like severe social anxiety, which is a good representation of my struggles. And also the fact that she didn't imply anywhere that things could get better or improve, or that it's temporary. She didn't say that I'm dealing with temporary autistic burnout or anything like that. Like, so it was pretty validating overall. Now I just have to finish preparing my application, get as much supporting documentation as possible. The medical certificate is only valid for 6 months, so that gives me like a bit of a deadline to work with, but I'm not gonna wait six months to send it. But yeah, I'm gonna have to gather as much evidence as possible to prove that I can't work, and we'll see how it goes. And if it doesn't go through, if it gets rejected, which isn't always the case, like I've heard from people who said that their application was approved right away, things like that. We'll see if it gets approved. Otherwise, I'll make an appeal and go from there, which is also what she said. Like, she was like, it might get rejected, but it's okay, you can just make an appeal. And I was like, oh, okay, that gives me hope. So anyway, I'm gonna go try to rest and regulate. I'm pretty happy overall with how it went. Obviously, the cost is huge, but I expected it. It's nothing new, it's nothing surprising. I'll just have to cross my fingers now. I've done my best. I'll keep you updated. I'm gonna end this video now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.